welcome to Come Alive with us. Today we have Liz Keller, who is an executive vice president and extraordinary leader. I met Liz through my last position, and I just always admired her. I loved the way that she showed up in meetings, how she spoke. She was both elegant and powerful at the same time, and I'm just so grateful to have her here now.
Absolutely. My pleasure to be here. I'm quite flattered. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Liz, we usually just jump in and give a little bit of background about yourself, and then we'll do like a lightning round. Does that work for you?
That sounds great.
Awesome. So if you could just, give a little bit of background about your experience, what you're doing now, that would be great.
Yeah, sure. I have been a strategist for the majority of my career. I actually started out doing search engine optimization 1 trillion years ago. And one thing led to another. Met a guy, moved to London, got married. So I actually spent the bulk of my agency career in the UK. And I made a transition then from working in search engine optimization to working in strategy, and, just kind of kept on that track. And here I am. I've been at kind of all agencies, great and small, good and bad. And, I think with every agency and with every client, you have to treat it as an opportunity to kind of take what you can get out of all of it and kind of like squeeze the juice and squeeze the goodness out of it. I get asked a lot, like, if I want to become a strategist, what should I do? And I think it's like, find the things that work for you, and no two strategists have the same background or training or exposure or experience, but you kind of take the grab bag and see the things that are most applicable to you and your strengths and your capabilities. So I've kind of done that my whole career. And so here I am.
I love that. And just to your point, no two strategists are the same. I think that's super helpful to know as someone's going about it and trying to navigate that path.
Yeah, there's not like a cookie cutter, like you take these classes in university, and then you get this job, and then you work for that client, and then all of a sudden, hey presto, you're a strategist. I think like the core of good strategy and good strategists are kind of relentless curiosity and like that innate desire to see where like weird paths lead. And I don't think like training or a course or a methodology, there's no one size fits all like way to get there.
Definitely. Well, kind of thinking through that, what has been a book or resource that has had a profound impact or influence on your approach to leadership?
It's so funny because I know a lot of my peers, a lot of our colleagues have like, this is the book, the like management book, or the like, the thing that I read that gave me the keys to success. Weirdly enough, I don't have that book. I don't read a lot of those types of books. I'd say the thing that's probably been most useful in terms of understanding leadership and understanding behavior is a subscription to the New Yorker. Because it is, again, it's that kind of fuel to feed that relentless curiosity, because like one issue you'll be reading about like some politician in a country you don't know much about, and the next issue you'll be reading about, like, to borrow from Parks and Recreation, like the history of the ladder. You just like, you never know what you're going to get.
Right.
And it's so weird how you can apply stuff that doesn't necessarily seem connected to like the core of your work.
Yeah.
To stuff that actually is, just by kind of feeding that curiosity.
That's so interesting and such a good point. And like, every edition you're getting something new. So you're constantly learning, and it's definitely feeding that curiosity.
Yeah.
Yeah. So building off of that, who would you say is your favorite authentic leader and why? Do you have one?
It's so funny. I was going to be like Elizabeth Warren. Like, she's amazing. I mean, she is amazing, because I love how Elizabeth Warren is a very prepared and elegant and eloquent speaker, but also has like structure and a plan behind everything. So like, in terms of like somebody people would recognize, sure, Elizabeth Warren. In terms of like the person who's probably had the most fundamental impact on like how I think about leadership and thought construction and narrative and just kind of like overall structure, is my AP high school English teacher. Shout out to Mrs. Sabatini. She was absolutely terrifying in the best possible way, in that she was rigorous and firm and just really all about like, if you know what your boundaries are, you have complete freedom within those boundaries. But she spent probably half of every educational chunk of time with us just putting these very, very strict, rigid regulations about how we were to think. How it was very like Platonic, Aristotelian, like ordered and logical structure, but knowing how to do that has paid off my entire career. Because if you don't know what the endpoint is, you don't know how you're measuring it, or you don't know how you want to get to that, from A to Z, you just kind of flap around and waste a lot of time and feel very at sea. But if you understand the key structural components of how to get where you need to go, it is much easier to fulfill that brief or that assignment or that life ambition or whatever it is. So it's not some like, oh, I studied Bill Gates every day. Like, I'm sure he's a swell guy, but it's like, it's this woman who just kind of taught me how to think, fortunately, when I was like, 16, 17 years old. And I've taken that with me my whole career, my whole life.
And I witnessed that with new business. I remember you would come in and really structure things. They'd be a little chaotic before you'd come in, take a deep breath and be like, okay, guys, this is what we're going to do. And it was very effective.
Great. I mean, I have a pet peeve of people who just kind of like roll into meetings without an agenda. Like, my favorite expression is like, the purpose of this meeting is to, because then at least you give everyone like an understanding of where you are and where you're trying to go.
That's a good point. Exactly. And so often that doesn't happen, which is so
it rarely does.
Yeah, more rare for it to happen, I guess. Well, how would you define authenticity in the context of leadership?
It's such a loaded question because I have a very conflicted view of like bringing your whole self to work. And I think that's a very like fraught topic right now, especially because we are seeing a lot of generational shift. Like, I'm Gen X. I work with a ton of millennials who are all edging up to, their 40s themselves. And then we see this new generation of like Gen Z people, colleagues who have a very different approach to their expectations from work and what they want to bring of themselves to the table. So in terms of authentic leadership, I think a thing that is consistent across the board is like, even if you don't want to bring like your whole social life and like all your past joys and traumas and successes and failures, like I have found that authentic leaders are ones who like have a genuine sense of their own values. Not that they're like moralizing or moralistic per se, but that they know what they bring to the table and they know the things that are resonant for them, that are important to them. And they are looking for that kind of a reflection of like core values. And like, this can cut both ways. You can have people who are like ruthless and relentless and really don't care about
Right.
people's happiness. And it's business. I imagine there are people who would make an argument like, you're not here to be happy, you're here to earn money and to make your business money. And often you find those people in positions of like extreme power and leadership. But the stuff that's important to me as a leader is to make sure that I am bringing, I hope a true sense of like value and morality and appreciation for the work that is being done and how it is hard, and how I try and be in the habit of like never asking people to do something that I haven't do or would do myself. But I think it's about, how you bring your values and what's important to you to the table in a professional environment where, your coworkers are not your family. You can't fire your family. I mean, I guess you can, but like rarely, so we're put in this kind of unnatural intimacy with people that you probably would otherwise never associate with. And then you're associating with them 45, 50, 60, 70 hours a week. So if you're not kind of like showing up consistently at like 7 a.m. and then at like 3 o'clock in the morning when like the thing is due in 5 hours and you just want to like get it out the door, like if you're not consistent in that, you're probably not a very effective leader.
Right. That's a good point. Exactly. I love that. Well, what's one daily habit? I'm sure there's millions, but like in your opinion, what's one daily habit that can kind of set leaders apart?
I've read this, and I mean, there's like statistical evidence that this is true, and it's also just something I've kind of done my whole life. Like, make your bed. Like, even if the rest of the day goes south immediately, if you get up and you make your bed, you've done one thing consistently, and it's under your control. And there's like some statistic that's like 89% of successful leaders like do this one thing every morning. So I don't know if it's true. I haven't done the research to confirm it, but I will say that like even on your worst day, even when like all of your best laid plans are like running down the tubes, at least you can be like, I made my bed this morning, and tonight at whatever time I get into it, it will be like fresh and crisp, and I can like kind of bookend whatever chaos has happened with like something
Yes,
under my control.
yes. I've heard that before. There's even a book called Make Your Bed, I believe.
Of course there is.
But it's like, that one step every day just sets you up for success and gets you in a routine and a pattern. So,
And it could be a bed of the mind. Like if there's one, maybe it's just one thing that that's like a fairly low stakes thing that you can accomplish. It gives you structure and control and something that just lets you tick one box once a day.
exactly. Well, you kind of touched on this, talking about your approach to leadership and your style. How has it evolved over the years?
I think I was gonna say, I don't know. I actually don't have a great answer for that because I think it's really difficult to reflect on yourself as a leader. Like I would point you to like folks I've managed over the years. I think it's about having a little bit more confidence that like people are always, I think, doing their best and giving like I think just being aware that like even if you're not 100% delighted with people's work 100% of the time, like everyone is just doing their best and like
Yeah.
having a little bit more grace. Patience has never been one of my strong suits. It's something that I've been working on my entire career of, being more patient. And I think like just assuming best intent from everybody, even when you might not see eye to eye with somebody, like we're all just kind of out here doing our best.
We're
Like,
just humans. Yeah.
yeah. And I think so like keeping that front of mind. And I think just having a little bit more even just awareness of like I know what imposter syndrome did to me early in my career and how like damaging and devastating it is because your brain is lying to you. And we talk a lot with folks I work with about kind of like comparison is the thief of joy. Letting that go is probably the biggest like change between how I was as a manager earlier in my career versus how I am now. It's like everyone has imposter syndrome. Michelle Obama has imposter syndrome. Like everyone is struggling with it, but like pushing that voice down and away lets other more important voices, I think, be louder and makes you be a better leader and a better manager.
Love that. Yeah, because it's never going to go away entirely. It's just learning how to manage it and live with it.
Yeah. And like understanding that other people are, other people are faking it until they make it too. And like that's what we're all just doing.
Exactly. Well, that kind of leads me into another question, which is, with the rise of remote work and having all these geographically dispersed teams, how are you, staying connected with your teams? And have there been any strategies that have been effective for, maintaining that strong team connection?
Yeah, it's a phenomenal question. And when I think that like now there's all this tension about RTO and whether that's like the better thing for employees to get the cross-pollination. It I personally think that because I have faith in the work that the folks that I manage are doing, that I think they're working hard, I think they're working efficiently. I don't care if you're working from like your backyard or an office or Timbuktu, like it doesn't bother me. The way to keep connected, I think is again through like a regular cadence. Like we have, my chief strategy officer is awesome. Like we have a 15-minute weekly call with everyone on the strat team. And then we have an hour long I think it's every month or every 2 weeks. My direct reports, I have one-on-ones with them at least once a week. If something's like hot to trot, then we'll pick that cadence up. But like there is a time on everyone's calendar, at least once a week in different combinations, that like that is sacrosanct time. That is time for you, that is time for me to make sure whatever you're working on, pencils go down and you have that conversation about like, you know, what do you have for this week? What's good? What's bad? Where do you need support? Because that way you can anticipate and kind of see around the corners. And it doesn't matter where you are in the world. I think you have the luxury of like sitting with your team, especially if you're junior, you learn a lot just by listening. And I think that's one of the things that I think, especially folks who are just coming into the workforce and are remote or hybrid, risk missing out on a little bit because I think back to my earlier career, it's like you learn more by like watching somebody who really knows what they're doing, like nailing it with
Right.
strategy or client or like whatever it is. And then if you're remote most of the time, you don't get that kind of like porosity of information. But that means you just have to compensate more and more, especially I think with junior folks, to make sure that as much as you can do, you're still exposing them to like not just the sausage, but like how the sausage is made, because that's how you learn.
That's so true. And that's, I think the hardest part about the remote work is not having that exposure and, those real experiences. So I think that's amazing that you're aware of that and trying to make sure that that's, still being covered.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, it's really time consuming. And I mean, I don't think I get it right 100% of the time, but I think, it's a really important thing to try and commit to, especially in this like kind of weird hybrid universe we live in now.
Right, exactly. Well, speaking of not getting it right, do you have an example of like a time when, there was a tough decision you had to make and your thought process behind it?
Every day is tough decisions. I think every day as somebody, do you mean like kind of managerially or strategically?
That's a great question. It could go either way.
Yeah, I mean, I think like the tough decisions sometimes are about people and people management. And if you have to, if someone's performance is not where it needs to be and you have to put them on a performance improvement plan, or you have to let them know that, they're not really the right fit for that role. It's horrendous. And the decision making, I think, in that circumstance is like as hard as this is on you, the deliverer of the information, it is a million times harder on the person who's getting pipped or, getting fired. And I think that's when it's really important to not only bring the structure of like, this is the argument of why we have an opportunity to improve your performance or why you're not a good fit, but also to make sure that like you lead as much as possible with EQ, because at the end of the day, it might be hard for you because you're delivering bad news, but it is that person's worst day. And it's rotten. It's very difficult. But to make sure, like there's that CEO, oh god, it's probably like 6 or 8 months ago where like it was like some LinkedIn thing and he was like crying as he was like talking about like the layoffs he had to do. It's like, man, I know this is hard for you, but like you have a job, you're probably sitting on a very healthy bank account, like slow your roll.
Yeah, exactly.
Nobody feels bad for you. The people that feel bad are the people who lost their jobs. So I think like those are the tricky times from a management perspective, but you have to make sure that you're coming at it with like a body of evidence. So I'm a big believer that like for reviews, whether it's 360s or one-on-ones or quarterlies or whatever the cadence is, like there shouldn't ever really be surprises. Like nobody should be getting brand new information in a formal review process. So
Right.
I can't think of a single time when I've had to make a kind of like management correction where it came as a surprise to like any of the parties involved. Like, strategically, it's all about hard decisions, right? It's about like it's the Walt Whitman two roads diverge in the yellow wood. Like they both look great. There's multiple paths you could go down.
Right.
And it's about, I think, again, a kind of like dispassionate evaluation of like, these are both good strategic routes, but this one has more places to go than this one. And just doing that evaluation, which is something that I think comes from like time and experience and sometimes just like arbitrary coin toss.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, kind of building off of that, what do you do in times of change or uncertainty with leading your teams? How do you effectively get through those times?
I mean, so I said kind of jokingly earlier, like you fake it until you make it, but if you lead with confidence, like you don't have to, as a leader, I think this is the secret, is like you don't have to be right 100% of the time. You just have to be confident 100% of the time. So even if you like make the wrong decision or like pick the wrong route, if you do it confidently because you've based it on like data and like experience and exposure and effort and thought and consideration, you very rarely find yourself so far down a path that like you cannot course correct.
Right.
But if you make those decisions because you believe at the time that you're making the right choices at every, at every fork in the road, like I think people follow confidence, even if it's I mean, well, we're in an interesting political climate right now, so but I think like confidence that's backed up with fact and truth and reality is very appealing to people because decisions are hard to make. So leading with confidence, leading with empathy, I think is kind of the trick to that.
No, definitely. And it's so true. That's such an important skill. And I think that people feed into that and they can tell, and it instills more confidence in them when they see confidence in the person that's leading them.
Yeah, I mean, I would say for any junior person I've ever worked with, like the biggest like delta in growth is rarely to do with like strategic skills or like research or thinking. Like, I mean, obviously there's always room for growth there, but it's the thing that I always try and work with folks on more so than just the mechanics of strategy is like presentational confidence, situational confidence. You might hate public speaking. You might hate talking to clients. You might hate pitching. But the more you do that and the better you are at kind of walking into a room and like feeling comfortable, even if you don't feel like you have to own it, like that's the single, I think, biggest career skill that like I want like everyone to go and take an improv class or like a public speaking class, because knowing that things are going to change in the room and that you can roll with it and like be comfortable anyway is just so critical for this work.
It really is. I mean, that's such valuable advice because, it's going to happen. It's inevitable. So you have to be able to just roll with the changes.
I was a drama major and I double majored in drama and English, but at the time I think horrified my mother. But it really, I mean, nothing has paid off more professionally than like being comfortable on my feet, speaking to a group of people and like knowing how to write well. I think those are two kind of like really, thanks, mom.
No, I mean, being able to speak strongly and yes, having strong writing skills, those are imperative across every industry, really,
Yeah.
not just siloed to communications. I wish more people realized that.
Yes, so do I.
Exactly. Well, kind of thinking about your leadership journey, what kind of legacy do you hope to leave and what kind of impact do you want to have on your team or your organization?
I mean, I think the legacy I'd like to lead is like I learned something from her, whether that is about how to do good strategy or like how to be a good leader. And like I never felt taken advantage of or like demeaned by. I think there's this, I want to be the kind of person who is remembered for like being positive and inspirational in a like not in a like look off into the middle distance and like that was amazing, but like truly like the literal definition of inspirational of like that person inspired me to take an action. And I think if I leave a legacy of like that was how to do good thinking and to like make the world in whatever context a little bit better and a little bit brighter, like that to me is more valuable than like she crushed it professionally. Like, I mean, that's important too, but like just kind of not being a jerk is a real key important factor right now. I think about like how I want to be remembered.
Yes, well, and I mean, you have been remembered that way, at least by me. I mentioned that with the work that we did, and I just remember you coming in and I being like, "Wow, this is a strong like female leader," and I just loved that because there weren't that many examples of that at that time that I was seeing. And you come in, you're strong, you're, independent, you're really smart on your feet. And I think that you are leaving that legacy. And I don't know, you touched my life.
Well,
So
that's lovely. And it is more than mutual. I think the stuff you're doing is like truly extraordinary. And I hope that the people closest to you in your life are telling you how proud they are of you every day. Cause I sure am. I think you're just doing really extraordinary stuff.
thank you. Well, this has been so amazing. And, we've gleaned so much. Is there anything that we haven't touched on that you think, would be helpful for anyone to, hear?
Um, I will share my personal professional mantra if it's helpful to anyone, which is feel the fear and do it anyway. And like, don't be afraid to be weird. Like big ideas are the ones that, and we're just coming off the back of the Super Bowl. I have my own opinions about it, but the ads that kind of, I think the work that sticks in people's mind are like the ones that kind of come a little bit out of left field. And that means somewhere someone was brave enough to like say the weird idea. And own that in yourself. Cause I think that like, that's a lot of people's superpowers, being a little quirky and like knowing how to channel that in a way that they can own.
I love that. Yes, just own it.
Own it.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, Liz, it has been so great having you on. I so appreciate you. And,
Same. It's absolutely my pleasure. And yeah, I'm easy to find if anyone ever needs to get in touch.
okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. It was great to chat to you. And I can't wait to see what you do next.
You too.
All right. Take care. Bye.